The older you get, the more your kindness becomes easy prey for those who don't deserve it. There are certain kinds of people, whether strangers or loved ones, close friends, or even family, who always seem to know exactly how to make you feel guilty, small, or worse. Invisible. That's not love. That's manipulation. That's exploitation. That's the slow erosion of your peace of mind, bit by bit. And if you want to spend the rest of your life in real peace, not just the absence of conflict, but true emotional freedom, there are 5 types of people you should stop being kind to. Inspired by Denzel Washington's wisdom, this video will help you recognize who they are and learn how to reclaim the peace you truly deserve. Following everything we've just shared with you about kindness, boundaries, and the importance of protecting your peace, it's time we talk about the first type of person you need to learn to let go of: the taker. It sounds simple, but in reality, this is the type of person who traps you in the deepest emotional pitfalls. They don't yell at you. They don't hurt you with cruel words. In fact, they might always smile, act polite, and occasionally even say thank you. But then, at some point, you realize they only reach out when they need something. And when you're the one who needs a kind word, a hug, or just a call to check in, they're always busy, always silent. They're like a beautiful wristwatch that's run out of battery. You keep wearing out of habit. But if you look closely, you'll see it no longer gives you any value. They make you feel loved, when in truth, you're being subtly used. Many people fall into this emotional loop, and Gloria's story, a 71-year-old woman, is one I'll never forget. Gloria was once the strongest, most capable woman in the neighborhood. She took care of her entire family on her own, cooking, babysitting, covering her brother's hospital bills, paying off her daughter's debts, even cleaning her cousin's house whenever she threw her back out. She never complained. To her, helping was a part of love. But then one day, Gloria fell and had to stay in the hospital for a week. Can you guess what happened? Not a single family member came to visit her. Not a word from the cousin. Her daughter sent one short text: "Hang in there, Mom. I'm on a work trip." She lay alone in that cold, sterile hospital room, staring up at the white ceiling and wondering, who have I been living for? And who has truly lived for me? She had given away nearly everything: her time, her health, her money, the best years of her life. And what she got in return was silence. Emptiness. A painful lesson. Love, if only flowing one way, isn't love. It's dependency. It's exploitation. I don't want you to reach that age before realizing this. I don't want you lying in a hospital bed before it hits you that you deserve care too. That love isn't just about giving. You are allowed to receive it too. And this is the moment to remember. If someone only contacts you when they need something, not to ask how you're doing, if you're okay, if today felt good or heavy, you have every right to say no, not because you're unkind, but because you're finally starting to understand that your heart deserves kindness too. You owe no one an explanation for your boundaries. And most importantly, you don't need to apologize for protecting your peace. I'm reminded of a moment from The Devil Wears Prada, when Andrea, the main character, realizes she's lost herself trying to please people who never truly cared for her. She says something powerfully honest: "I didn't come here to sell my soul." And neither did we. We're not here to be drained by people who only take and never give. If someone just popped into your mind, someone who always needs you, but is never there when you need them, ask yourself, am I being loved? Or am I being used? You deserve relationships that nourish your spirit, where you don't have to be a superhero, where you don't have to sacrifice everything just to feel accepted. And if you're still worried that pulling back might disappoint them, remember this: those who truly love you will understand. But takers, they'll be angry. And that, right there, is the clearest sign that they were never in it for you. They were in it for what you gave them. It's time to choose yourself, not out of selfishness, but out of wisdom. When you begin to listen to yourself, when you learn to say no to those who only show up to take, you've already taken a major step toward protecting your inner peace. But soon, you'll come across another type of person. They don't take your money. They don't ask for favors. They don't demand anything outright. But they wear you down, little by little, through their words, their glances, and their half smiles. These are the critics. Not everyone who hurts you raises their voice. Often, it's the soft words, the ones disguised as harmless, that leave the deepest scars, like water dripping on a stone. Over time, even the gentlest drop carves a groove. They don't yell. They don't explode. They just offer a gentle suggestion, a tiny reminder, or say things like, "I'm only telling you this because I care." But if you've ever been on the receiving end, you know, there's nothing gentle about those words. Each one is a tiny needle in your self-esteem. And when you've heard enough of them, you start to believe that maybe you're truly not good enough. Raymond, 82 years old, understands this better than anyone. He's a simple man, kind, probably one of the gentlest people you'll ever meet. Not the type to raise his voice or hold a grudge. For years, he was the peacemaker at every family gathering. And yet, ironically, he was also the target of the cruelest jokes, made heartbreakingly by the very people he loved. In nearly every gathering, someone would say, "I bet Uncle Raymond's still using that ancient phone from 2005. Why don't you get your teeth checked? That smile is kind of embarrassing." Oh no, here comes another one of Raymond's stories. Same one we've heard 100 times. Everyone would burst out laughing. No one saw anything wrong with it. But Raymond stayed quiet. You know what hurts more than silence? It's being made to feel invisible, inadequate, and unworthy, right in the places where you should feel most comforted and safe. Year after year, Raymond began to shrink. He stopped sharing, stopped telling stories, stopped laughing like he used to. He began to believe he was, in fact, a burden. What's most tragic is this: criticism masked as caring can be far more destructive than outright insults. It makes you question yourself from the inside out. If you hear a negative comment enough times, you no longer need others to hurt you. You'll start doing it yourself. That's the truth. After enough criticism, you begin to blame yourself for not being perfect, for not pleasing everyone. And soon, as if conditioned, you start changing, not to grow, but to be accepted. You live to keep others comfortable, even if it means quietly breaking apart inside. But kindness doesn't mean silence. Kindness doesn't mean allowing yourself to shrink for the sake of harmony. You have the right to protect your worth. You don't need to be perfect. You don't have to keep the peace if it means becoming a shadow of yourself. You weren't born to be pleasing. You were born to be whole. There's a powerful scene in the king's speech where the king, a man with a stutter, belittled by family and the media, finally declares, "I have a voice, and I want you to remember that. You have a voice, and it deserves to be heard." If you're surrounded by people who constantly make you feel like you're not enough, pause. Ask yourself, are they helping you grow? Or are they holding you back with their so-called well-meaning advice? Sometimes these people are family, friends, longtime colleagues. But closeness is not a license to hurt you. You can still be kind and draw a firm line. You can still be respectful and set clear boundaries. Never forget, kindness begins with how you treat yourself. Many people used to believe that the closest relationships between grandparents and grandchildren, among family members, were the safest spaces to simply be yourself. No need to defend, no pressure to prove anything. Just a quiet refuge of understanding. But time has a way of revealing the truth. Sometimes it's these very relationships that plant the deepest wounds. Not through harsh words, but through a sharper, quieter strategy, guilt. It's hard to recognize at first, because it doesn't come as direct insult. There's no yelling, no public confrontation, just a heavy sigh, a disappointed glance, or the kind of offhand comments that tighten something in your chest. "You must be busy, Grandma. I won't bother you anymore. It's been a while since you visited." The kids seem to be getting used to it, I understand. Old people have to put themselves first. Have you ever found yourself in that place? Where all you're trying to do is protect your own boundaries, and suddenly, someone, without raising their voice or asking for anything, makes you question your own heart to the point of sleepless nights. When your kindness is no longer seen as a gift, but a default expectation. Margaret, 79, is a perfect example of this quiet heartbreak. She is not a weak woman. She spent her entire life being kind, generous, and devoted to her family. But even kindness has limits. Her back had been aching for days. The doctor had scheduled a follow-up. So when her granddaughter called, asking if she could watch the two kids while she and her husband went on a holiday trip, Margaret gently said no. She thought the explanation, her health, would be enough, that her granddaughter would understand. But she didn't. The reply wasn't angry, but it was cold, sharp, like a bucket of icy water thrown on a trust. "It's okay, Grandma. I'll figure it out. I guess I was expecting too much. Maybe the kids just need to get used to not having anyone there to help." No one yelled at her, but no one hugged her either. No one said, "That's okay, Grandma. Your health matters most." And it was that silence, that absence of understanding, that left Margaret choking on guilt. This was no longer a simple no. It was a trap, an emotional trap that required no persuasion, because the victim would walk into it on their own. They'd blame themselves, sacrifice themselves, hurt themselves just to avoid hurting someone else. We call this behavior guilt tripping, emotional manipulation masked as love. It's a form of soft control where feelings are used as weapons to make you act, not out of desire, but out of fear. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear of disappointing someone you love. You don't always notice it right away, because it doesn't scream toxic, but the damage is real. You slowly lose the ability to say no. You lose your right to decide for yourself. And most dangerously, you begin to lose trust in your own intuition. In The Crown, where Queen Elizabeth says to her sister, "Guilt, when used as a weapon, is the cruelest of all." And it's true. Once guilt is used as a method of control, it no longer connects us. It binds us like invisible chains, tightening around even the kindest hearts until they can barely breathe. If you've ever been in Margaret's position, I want you to remember this. You can say no and still be a good person. You can set boundaries without needing to apologize. You can choose yourself without needing to justify it to anyone. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I truly want to help? Or am I just trying to avoid the guilt someone else has made me feel? Real love never asks you to sacrifice your well-being for approval. Real love doesn't demand your peace in exchange for someone else's comfort. And if what someone calls love only ever leaves you suffering in silence, that's not love. That's manipulation. Life isn't just about learning to love others. It's also about learning to protect yourself from unhealthy expectations. Sometimes the biggest turning point in your life isn't when you learn to give, it's when you finally have the courage to stop. And when you're clear-headed enough to step out of emotional traps, you begin to see more clearly who genuinely cares and who's just looking for someone to exploit your softness. The journey ahead is still filled with other people you'll need to recognize. Next, we'll take a closer look at a different kind of relationship. One where you're not criticized, not manipulated, but constantly compared as if you're never quite enough. That, too, is a wound worth naming. The loneliest feelings in the world was having no one to share your success with. But I was wrong. There's another kind of loneliness, more subtle, more insidious. It's when someone is right beside you, pretending to be happy for you, while behind their eyes lies quiet resentment, comparison, and a silent wish that you wouldn't outshine them. This is the silent sadness of being compared, a feeling that steals the joy from your victories. No matter what you achieve, you can't fully celebrate, because you know the moment you shine, their eyes dim. Not because they hate you, but because they can't stand to see you happier than they are. It could be a close friend, a colleague, a family member, people you thought would cheer you on with all their heart. But then you realize their compliments sound like polite speeches void of real sincerity. Helen, 76, is a retired elementary school teacher. After years of dedicating herself to her husband and children, she finally gave herself permission to pursue a long-forgotten passion, watercolor painting. She signed up for an art class for seniors, and coincidentally, her longtime best friend enrolled too. At first, everything seemed lovely. They attended class together, bought brushes together, even spent weekends painting under the trees in the park. But when Helen's instructor praised her for her sensitive use of color and selected her painting for a small student exhibition, everything changed. Instead of congratulating her, her friend casually said, "Oh, I thought that was your draft version. Maybe the teacher just wants to encourage beginners. And another time, while watching Helen frame her work with excitement, she sighed and muttered, "You're really putting in the effort." But at our age, doing all this can be a bit much. At first glance, the words seem harmless. But each comment felt like a tiny needle, pricking the surface of Helen's growing joy. She started to doubt herself. Am I being too much? Am I leaving her behind? And from just a few passive remarks, she began to pull back, sharing less, painting less, until she eventually stopped altogether. In the film Amadeus, there's a haunting moment when Salieri, a talented but not extraordinary composer, reads Mozart's music and feels both awe and agony, knowing he'll never reach that brilliance. He doesn't hate Mozart, but the constant comparison quietly destroys him from within. That's what I mean. Unspoken envy can kill a friendship, a passion, and a piece of your light. The issue was never Helen. It wasn't the painting. The real issue is that some people only feel valuable when they're doing better than others. And when you shine, they feel invisible. But here's what you need to remember. At this age, or any age, you don't need to compete with anyone. Life isn't a leaderboard. It's a garden. Each of us is a different flower, and your beauty doesn't take away from anyone else's. You deserve to celebrate yourself. You deserve to have someone clap loudly for you, not out of obligation, but out of genuine joy. And if you can't find that person, don't be afraid to be the one who hugs yourself and says, "I did it." Don't let anyone make you shrink just to fit their comfort zone. You weren't born to live in someone else's shadow. You were born to shine in your own light. Later, in a quiet act of courage, Helen returned to her art class. She didn't brag about her paintings. She didn't tell anyone she had just completed a new piece. This time, she painted for herself, not for praise, not for approval. She painted as if whispering to herself, "My joy doesn't need permission." If you've ever met a Helen in your life, or maybe you are Helen, I hope you remember this. No one has the right to make you feel like you have to be modestly bright so others won't feel small. You don't have to dim your light just to make others more comfortable in their darkness. The more you honor who you truly are, the more you radiate a kind of magnetism that requires no explanation. And when that happens, you'll start attracting the people who genuinely rejoice in your success. People who don't compete, but walk with you, enjoying the journey. Next, we'll explore another kind of person. Not competitive, not manipulative, but whose endless negativity slowly drains your spirit. One thing I've learned after all these years of living is this. Not all wounds come from shouting, fury, or cruel words. Some injuries arrive wrapped in silence. Some with a mask of kindness, gentle, polite, sometimes even accompanied by a smile, but they keep you up at night, unsettled. I used to believe that if I just stayed calm, avoided conflict, and tried to be understanding, I could maintain peace. But I was wrong. True peace can't be borrowed from endurance. Real peace is not something you gain by sacrificing your self-respect. David, 83 years old, a kind, soft-spoken man who lived in a modest home near the park. He was once an engineer, precise, composed, meticulous. Each day, he would tend to the small garden in front of his house, caring for his potted chrysanthemums and greeting neighbors with his gentle smile. Among those neighbors was Rachel, around his age, who lived next door. At first glance, Rachel didn't seem like a difficult person. She never raised her voice, never openly criticized anyone. But what wore David down wasn't aggression. It was the way Rachel communicated, always indirect, vague, laced with sarcasm disguised as politeness. She never truly helped, though her words made it sound like she might. One time, David asked if she could watch his house for a few hours while he went to a doctor's appointment. Rachel replied with a smile, "Oh, if I could manage that, I'd be a superhero by now." Another time, David gently brought up the nightly noise coming from Rachel's house. She responded with a smirk, "Well, my old ears are just glad to still catch a bit of sound. It keeps things lively." Not a single direct refusal. Nothing overtly rude. But these kinds of remarks, repeated over time, were like grains of sand slipping into David's heart, leaving him confused, hesitant, and eventually guilt-ridden. Am I being too sensitive? He wondered. Maybe I'm being a nuisance? You see, passive manipulation doesn't provoke immediate anger. Instead, it makes you question your own feelings. Like in a 1944 film Gaslight, where the protagonist slowly begins to believe she's losing her mind, while in reality, she's being subtly and expertly manipulated. That was exactly the kind of psychological pressure David had to endure. What's dangerous is that people like Rachel often hide behind humor. Their sarcasm is easily brushed off with excuses like, "Oh, they were just joking," or "they didn't mean anything by it." But that kind of veiled cruelty cuts far deeper than direct confrontation ever could. I've been in situations like that too, where someone wouldn't say, "I disagree with you," but instead would remark, "Oh wow, I didn't expect that to be your choice." Light words, heavy consequences. Suddenly, you're burdened with questions. Did I do something wrong? Was that inappropriate? Am I being difficult? But one day, I came to a quiet realization. No one has the right to make me doubt myself just because they lack the courage to speak honestly. Kindness should never be a currency for manipulation, and politeness should not be a disguise for emotional control. After enduring this quiet toxicity for too long, David made a decision. He stopped turning to Rachel. Instead, he began spending time with a local seniors group, where he felt heard, supported, and most importantly, where he didn't have to decode every sentence. No more awkward laughter after being subtly insulted. He chose a space where peace wasn't something he had to beg for. It was something he deserved. I believe all of us have encountered a Rachel at some point. Maybe at work, maybe in the family, and sometimes, sadly, in the relationships we once considered the closest. But from David's story, I want to remind you of this. You don't have to endure fake smiles to maintain an empty relationship. You don't have to nod along just to avoid rocking the boat. And you certainly don't have to bend your feelings for someone who doesn't know how to be honest. Peace is not something you beg for. Peace is a birthright, and you have the right to say, "I won't accept this kind of treatment anymore." Choose to be around people who speak the truth, even if clumsily, rather than those who wound you with cold, calculated charm. Be close to those who lift your spirit, not the ones who make you constantly question what you did wrong. And if you've ever been hurt by someone like Rachel, please know you're not alone, and you don't have to keep enduring it. It's not always easy to recognize where the line is between kindness and self-betrayal, especially if you're used to putting others before yourself. But eventually, there will come a quiet moment when you ask, "How long have I been living for someone else?" If you've made it this far into the story, perhaps a few faces are appearing in your mind. Maybe it's the one who constantly criticizes you with a smile, or the one who makes you feel guilty just for choosing your own needs. You know the type. They never raise their voice, but they drain you slowly and quietly by making you feel like you're never quite enough. Pause. Don't brush that feeling aside. Ask yourself, among the 5 kinds of people we've been exploring, who's sitting too close to the inner circle of your life? They're the truth I've come to understand more clearly with age. Growing old isn't about tolerating more toxicity. It's about clearing it out of your soul. No one deserves a place in your heart if they can't respect the peace you've worked so hard to build. A quote from the film The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, where a group of older characters find the courage to let go of unhealthy ties and finally live true to themselves. It's never too late to start again, to find your joy, to protect your peace. You are not obligated to serve anyone unconditionally. Kindness does not mean being endlessly accommodating, endlessly agreeable, or endlessly patient. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to say enough to yourself. Enough of the sweet-sounding guilt trips. Enough of the handshakes laced with hidden thorns. Enough of sacrificing your own joy just to maintain a relationship that holds a name but no meaning. You have the right, and more than that, you deserve to decide who is allowed into the most sacred parts of your life: your heart, your time, and your peace. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to write down what you've taken from it. Maybe it's just a single reflection, a name you need to step back from, or a sentence you'll use to protect yourself next time. And if you found it helpful, don't hesitate to share it with someone else. Because you never know, one sentence you pass on might become the turning point for someone else who's finally ready to live lighter, freer, after years of carrying invisible weight. Aging is not the end of the story. It's a new chapter where you finally get to rewrite the rules for yourself. Begin protecting your peace, starting today. Thank you for staying until the end of this video. That simple act not only means the world to us, it shows that you truly value your own peace and happiness. Life's journey is not always simple, especially when you begin to set boundaries. Let go of what's toxic and choose to live on your own terms. But you're not alone. We're here with you to reflect, to understand, and to help strengthen one another through every story, every video, every quiet moment you take to truly listen to yourself. If today's story stirred something in you, if you suddenly realize there's someone in your life who needs to be repositioned, write it down. Share it with us. Whether it's a personal story, an old wound, or a moment of awakening, we're here to listen. And who knows, maybe your story will be the next one we tell, in a video made just for you. If you're carrying a different struggle, don't hesitate to leave a comment. Tell us what you need, so we can create content that truly helps you heal, release, and move forward, stronger and steadier. Don't forget to hit like if you found this video meaningful, share it with someone who needs to hear this today, and leave your thoughts in the comments, because your words might be exactly what someone else needs to feel a little lighter. And be sure to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next stories we share, each one crafted to walk alongside you on this journey toward a deeper, softer, and more meaningful life. We'll see you in the next video. And remember, you always have the right to choose peace for your life, even if no one ever gave you permission to before.